And now CDPR are at a point where they broke our trust. And there's an opportunity in this message for them to offer some true vulnerability, to say, here's something that we got wrong. Here's something that happened in this situation, a bit of context that you can connect to as a human being. And there is a risk for us to tell you, but we're going to trust that you will meet it with compassion. And it's going to connect us as not just a company and a consumer base, but as people working on something to people who are enjoying something, people to people. That's what you want. And what Martin's about to tell us is like the saddest attempt at corporate vulnerability. It is more like an excuse, and it's sad. Marcin Nowinski, this guy's been a long timer, CDPR. I've seen this guy on the interview show that Danny O'Dwyer does. What's it called? No Clip. He has a great documentary about The Witcher and CDPR, and this guy's in it. And this guy was there from the days when CDPR was a company that was about doing localizations in Polish for games for Baldur's Gate and shit like that. Like, this guy has just been around. He's the right person to have talking to this audience. But let's see what he has to say. No audio. Thank you. That should now be fixed.
Started CD Projekt 25 years ago. One of its founding principles was honest and direct communication with gamers. When CD Projekt Red, the game development part of CD Projekt, was born, it added something important to that principle, the ambition to make the best games in the world. It became our mission and something that guided us up until now. Based on that legacy of
just a phrasing thing. It guided them up until now. It's like, what? Does that change now? Maybe it sounded better in Polish.
Genuine and honest communication, you've trusted us and pre-ordered our game. And despite good reviews on PC, the console version...
Sorry to pause again. Trust is a very important word. And it's a word I'm going to revisit here when I critique this. But I want you to think about your experience of trust in your life, how trust is earned, and how it's broken.
Of Cyberpunk 2077 did not meet the quality standard we wanted it to meet. I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that. Please don't fault any of our teams for what happened. They all are incredibly talented and hardworking. Myself and the board are the final decision makers, and it was our call to release the game. Although, believe...
That's good. So, accountability. Him and the board, I'm not sure who else is on the board, but that might be worth looking up, were the ones who made the decision to release the game. He's taking ownership of the problem. Let's see what he says next.
Believe me, we never ever intended for anything like this to happen. I assure you that we'll do our best to regain your trust. Now I'd like to tell you how the situation looked like from the inside. Cyberpunk 2077 is huge in...
Okay. So the way an apology works, apology when trust is broken. An apology should contain a few things. It should contain ownership, like an understanding of what happened, an ownership, a reflection of ownership, of responsibility for what happened. It should also contain, ideally, a course of action. What we will be doing, what I will be doing to address the problem. And a really good apology also offers something very important, which is vulnerability. One of the easiest and best ways to build trust in human relationships is to repay vulnerability with compassion. I'll give you an example. If you have a water cooler conversation with some guy at work, and all he ever talks about is bullshit, the weather, what's going on in the news, politics, you have no reason to feel connected to this person. No, you don't know who this person really is, but if you go to the water cooler or whatever that is in our virtual times, the Discord server, I don't know, and you ask them how they're doing, and they tell you a personal story about some struggle they're having with their kid, and maybe they're not doing well in school and how it's affecting them. And they tell it to you in a way that's respectful, but in a way that also lets you know, hey, like, this is how I'm really doing. That person is making you vulnerable. And when someone's vulnerable with you like that, you trust them because you know what's at stake. You know what they're offering up. So they're offering vulnerability and you return compassion. And that exchange is what builds trust between two parties. Vulnerability repaid by compassion. So when we look at consumer interactions with The Witcher 3, I'm going to go back to this because this is like the good CDPR, right? This is when they got it right. We made ourselves vulnerable with them by opening our wallets and devoting our time to their product. And they repaid our vulnerability with compassion by giving us something that was meaningful. They said, yes, we understand you. We know what you want. We know what will uplift you and what will thrill you. And that interaction is what makes us trust them. And then they made themselves vulnerable by giving us more stuff and for free with all the DLC they added on top. That is a big part of why people trusted CDPR. And now CDPR are at a point where they broke our trust. And there's an opportunity in this message for them to offer some true vulnerability, to say, here's something that we got wrong. Here's something that happened in this situation, a bit of context that you can connect to as a human being. And there is a risk for us to tell you, but we're going to trust that you will meet it with compassion. And it's going to connect us as not just a company and a consumer base, but as people working on something to people who are enjoying something, people to people. That's what you want. And what Martin's about to tell us is like the saddest attempt at corporate vulnerability. It is more like an excuse, and it's sad. Anyway, I'll give it up to him. Here it is.
In scope. And I'm not only talking about quests or things you see at first glance. I'm talking about a multitude of custom objects, interacting systems, and mechanics. In the game, everything is not stretched out over flat terrain where we can make things less taxing hardware-wise, but condensed in one big city and in a relatively loading-free environment. On its own, this is a challenge, but we made it even more difficult for ourselves by wanting to make the game look epic on PCs and then adjusting it to consoles, especially old gens. That was our core assumption, and things did not look super difficult at first. We knew the hardware gap, yes, but ultimately, I think that time has proven that we've underestimated the task. To give a concrete example, and the main culprit, we had to constantly improve our in-game streaming system for all gen consoles. Streaming is responsible for feeding the engine with what you see on screen, as well as the game mechanics. And since the city is so packed and the disk bandwidth of all gens is what it is, it constantly challenged us. Every change and improvement needed to be tested, and as it turned out, our testing did not show a big part of the issues you experience while playing the game. As we got closer to the final release, we saw significant improvements each and every day, and we really believed we would deliver in the final Day Zero update. Now let's talk about the review process. We started sending our PC review keys in the first days of December. On launch day, December 10th, we hit the ground running with a really good start on PC. While not perfect, it's a version of Cyberpunk we are very proud of. At the same time, we're fighting for quality on all gen consoles till the very last moment. And every extra day of us working on the Day Zero update brought visible improvement. This is why we started sending console review keys on the 8th of December, which was later than we originally planned. This all happened while working from home with all the challenges resulting from the COVID-related restrictions. A lot of the dynamics we normally take for granted got lost over video calls or email, and we took that hit too. Now I'd like to tell you about our plans for the future and present a path for Cyberpunk 2077 on consoles and PC. We have all
So briefly reviewing what Martin said so far. Oh, hey, Lex says, deliver the product that a reasonable person could expect to be delivered, iterate on the product, fix the problem for people down in the individual level. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the critical path. Definitely. And they're trying to navigate it. What Martin has said is that they delivered a game that did not meet their high standards, which is a statement that in and of itself is somewhat self-contradictory. If you put out a product, then it is by definition your standard. So then what that then suggests is that they are incompetent in manifesting their standards. And then Martin goes on to talk about how what they tried to do was hard. And they worked hard up until the last minute. And I don't think anyone was really doubting that people worked hard on this. I think at the end of the day, the thing that needs looking at isn't how hard it was to do, but it was how the decisions were made to release the game. It seems to me that we're looking at a game that needed another year of development before it went into the polish and publish cycle. At least another year of development. Why didn't it get that? Why did it get to this state where it needed another year of development at the time it was being promised to be released? Those are problems that are not answered, but that are not addressed in this video, and concerns that we as consumers have no reason to expect that Martin's going to do anything differently about. We're going to listen to what his plans are to update the game and make it right and offer refunds and all that good stuff. But what we really want to hear from Martin, what I really want to hear from Martin is how they're going to fix their broken decision-making apparatus. Why is it, how could it be so broken? And what are they doing to address that specifically? Because we all know developers bust ass. And we all know that the worst games in the world have been worked on by people who bust ass and who are talented. Like, we need a higher level of accountability than this. And the fact that because we're not getting it, there's not an opportunity to actually invest trust by repaying his vulnerability with compassion. Because the vulnerability of saying the game is hard to make is cheap. We all know that. That's not new information. Lex says the game should never have been on last gen. Trying to shove your dick into that Cheerio caused way more trouble than it was worth. Damn straight, brother. Shuffle says those problems are industry-wide. Studios always pushing already impossible deadlines closer and closer, and this happens. Yeah. I think I read a headline recently where developers at some studio, I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it's Blizzard? We're working on forming what's it called? A union, a developers union, which seems like it could be kind of a good idea. It's interesting how game studios and game publishers have benefited from a generation of people who grew up playing video games, and as they were entering the mainstream, and now as adults are passionate about working on them and exploiting that passion. I think in any kind of artistic industry, there will always be some exploitation of passion in that way. But certainly there's got to be a way to normalize it. And unions seem like a way to do it. I have no idea how these things work in Hollywood. But I know they've been around and dealing with the problems for longer. So we'll just have to see what happens. Anyway, let's see what Martin has to say to wrap up this video.
Already released 3 hotfixes improving the game, but that's just the beginning. Our ultimate goal is to fix the bugs and crashes gamers are experiencing across platforms. Please expect bigger and smaller patches on a regular basis. The first update will be dropping within 10 days, and it will be followed by another, more significant one in the following weeks. We will, of course, continue to work on the game in future updates and improvements beyond that. Our big plans for supporting Cyberpunk in the long term did not change. As for the free DLCs, our initial plan was to deliver them just after the release, much like we did with
I
The
hate
Witcher
this
3.
yellow color
We
so
decided to
much.
focus on the most important fixes and updates first, and we'll
It's
be
making me
releasing the
dissolve.
DLCs afterwards. Expect more information in the upcoming months.
Hang on. Release, hotfix, hotfix, hotfix. Patch 1.1. Isn't 1.1 the update that just landed? I think I saw an article from Paul Tazi saying this ain't the update you're waiting for. I wonder where on this timeline I'm going to feel comfortable jumping back in. I'm having a feeling it might be pretty far to the right.
For those of you playing on next-gen consoles in back compatibility, you can still expect the free next-gen update for Xbox Series consoles and PlayStation 5 arriving in 2021. We are aiming at the second half of the year. I'd like to end this video by assuring you that we treat this entire situation very seriously and are working hard to make it right.
As they should.
The guiding principles of our company are still core to what we do. We still want to make amazing games and have an open communication with you, our players. For now, our immediate focus is to work hard on making sure you enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 regardless of platform. Beyond Cyberpunk, we have many plans for the future, which we'll share more about when we're ready. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.
All right. Well, there it is from Martin himself.